I would also like to take into account the tantric tradition, tantra shastras. I would like to say that just as the doctrines of the orthodox systems, which are six in number, are organized in pairs of three, like Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, and Purva and Uttar Mimamsa. So in the same way, the tantric scriptural tradition also organized into three sets, three streams, which is dual, dual come non-dual, and so within these Shaiva, because tantric traditions are mostly Shaiva oriented, they are also called Shaivagamas. So within Agamas, the oldest Pashupata, and then later the Shaiva Siddhanta, these traditions are dualistic in nature. And Lakulesha Pashupata, which is an offshoot of the Pashupata religion, is an example dual come non-dual, Dvaita Advaita. And Trikadarshan, also called Triyambak Darshan, which is now has become famous in last 100 years as Kashmir Shaivism, and as Professor Pandey mentioned, the name of Vindam Chakravarti, he is one of the greatest scholars of Trikadarshan also. So the Trikadarshan is completely non-dual. It is the Advaita Darshan. Now I would like to kind of, because I'm aware of time, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So yeah, that's why I go fast. So let me highlight how the knowledge is organized in the Vedantic tradition. I mean the systems which have their origin in the Vedas, and I'll read quickly, and then I'll come to the how it is organized in the Tantric tradition. So Vedic darshans, because they focus mainly on moksha as the main value, so their whole doctrine is kind of wrapped around attainment of moksha, and different systems offer different ways to attain moksha. The Mimamsa, for example, it should be the knowledge of yaga, because according to them, yaga ev dharma, yagadi reva dharma. Sankhya says that it is samdhan of the principles, of the tattvas. And Yog Darshan talks about the union with supreme consciousness through samadhi, samatvam. Vedanta Darshan talks about Shravan, Manan, of the Mahavakyas, the, the four great sentences coming from the Vedic and Upanishadic tradition. All of you know them. Pragyana Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma, Tattvamasi, and Aham Brahmasmi. Now coming to my main point, in comparison to this soteriological aim of Vedic philosophy, the aims of tantric philosophy are completely different. Because the tantras do not offer any soteriological system, because the theory of samsara or avidya or maya as something which is here is not there in the tantras. Because in the tantras, everything is of the nature of everything else. Sarma, Sarvatmakam. And that Sarvatmakam is Shiva. So there is this Sarva Shivatmakam. Shiva is considered as the name for supreme consciousness there. So it's very interesting that they don't say that this should be avoided and this should be assimilated. This is He and this is Upade. They rather tell us to recognize the real nature of the self, nature. So they organize their knowledge according to within the four categories of Vidya, Kriya, Yoga, and Charya. As denotes the knowledge. So the right kind of knowledge which takes into account the theoretical aspect of reality, like Sarvam Shivatmakam. This is a theoretical precept which is logically explained in the Tantras. This is Kriya. Now, Kriya part is the rules of Diksha and other rites. This is the Kriya part. According to them, the Dikshita is the Adhikari for coming to the Shaiva fold. Ah, okay, fine. So I'll leave it here then. नहीं.
Yeah, no request. You have 7. Only all of 7. Sorry. आदरणीय मृणाल जी, भाई जी, वक्ता और आप सब, अब 5 से 7 मिनट में भारतीय दर्शन पर क्या कुछ कहा जा सकता है आप समझ सकते हैं। लेकिन मेरे लिए सुविधा ये है कि मृणाल जी ने आरंभ में कुछ महत्वपूर्ण बातें की और अलका ने बहुत अच्छा वक्तव्य दिया, इससे हमारा काम थोड़ा आसान हो गया। मैं सूत्रों में 2-4 बातें रख, ये आप सब जानते हैं कि भारतीय चिंतन परमार्थ का चिंतन है और पूरी दुनिया में आलोक पर्व के रूप में प्रकट हुआ था ऋग्वेद, जिससे जगत की विद्या भाषित हुई थी। ऋग्वेद के पहले मंडल के 36वें 7वां मंत्र आता है, जिसमें स्वराज की चर्चा होती है। यजमान अग्नि की प्रार्थना करते हुए कहता है, ते घेमित्र नमस्विना उप स्वराज मासते, यानी हे अग्नि, आप स्वयं प्रकाशित हैं, मैं आपकी याचना करता हूँ। यही स्वराज, इसके बारे में सायणाचार्य ने भाष्य करते हुए कहा कि स्वराज स्वराज्यम स्वतो दीप्यमान, स्वराज स्वयं में प्रकाशमान है। इसी को गांधी जी ने इसी स्वराज की चर्चा की है और गांधी जी का पूरा सर्वोदय है और उनका समग्र चिंतन है, इस स्वराज प्राप्ति का ही चिंतन है। और यही स्वराज योग वासिष्ठ में सत्ता सामान्य कहलाता है। स्वराज पाना, सत्ता सामान्य प्राप्त करना, यानी स्वयं को सिद्ध करना, अपने आत्म को सिद्ध करना और जीवन मुक्त हो जाना। तो यह जो चिंतन है भारतीय मनीषा का, इसी पर हमारे खट दर्शन भी आगे खड़े होते हैं, चाहे वो न्याय हो, सांख्य हो, योग हो, मीमांसा हो या वेदांत हो। और स्वयं इन 6 दर्शनों को हम आस्तिक दर्शन कहते हैं। इसलिए कहते हैं, आस्तिक दर्शन कहने का सीधा कारण यही होता है कि यह 6 दर्शन वेद को प्रमाण मानते हैं और 3 दर्शन जो वेद को प्रमाण नहीं मानते उनको नास्तिक दर्शन कहते हैं, जिसमें जैन दर्शन है, बौद्ध दर्शन है और चारवाक दर्शन। लेकिन मेरी अपनी मान्यता है और मेरी तो अपनी समझ है कि अगर ईश्वर की मान्यता को स्थगित कर दें और खट दर्शनों की बाकी मान्यताओं को जैन और बौद्ध पर लागू करके देखें, जैन और बौद्ध दोनों में आत्म कल्याण की बात है, दोनों में निर्वाण या कैवल्य प्राप्ति की बात है, दोनों में चित्त की शुद्धि की बात है। इसलिए जैन और बौद्ध दर्शन नास्तिक दर्शन नहीं है, ये व्यर्थ है। सिर्फ चारवाक दर्शन जो प्रत्यक्ष प्रमाण की बात करता है और एक तरह से हास्य पैदा करता है, इसको आज के जमाने में बड़ा बहुत विचित्र तरह से जो शुद्ध बुद्धिवादी लोग हैं और शुद्ध भौतिकवादी और व्यवहारवादी लोग हैं, वो चारवाक दर्शन को प्रमाण मानकर ऐसी ऐसी मूर्खताएं करते हैं कि यही सिद्ध है, क्योंकि यह प्रत्यक्ष है कि जब परलोक नहीं है, ईश्वर नहीं है, मरने पर मोक्ष नहीं है, तो चाहे जो कर्म को कर्म करो, चाहे जितना ऋण लो, जितने ऐशो आराम से रहो रहो, यह जो तर्क है चारवाकों का, और आप लोगों में से ज्यादातर लोगों को पता है कि चारवाक कोई व्यक्ति नहीं है, वो आचार्य बृहस्पति के सूत्र पर एक विकसित हुआ सिद्धांत है। और इस परंपरा में अनेक लोग जुड़ते गए जिनको चारवाकों, बद्योपाध्याय से लेकर तमाम बड़े महत्वपूर्ण दार्शनिकों की पुस्तकों में चारवाकों का जिक्र है, चारवाक का नहीं है। तो मूल बात यह है कि भारतीय दर्शन, और अलका ने बिल्कुल सही कहा, और भारतीय दर्शन पर बात करते हुए फिलॉसफी शब्द का प्रयोग नहीं किया, क्योंकि फिलॉसफी और दर्शन में बहुत बहुत अंतर है। तो सीधी बात यह है कि हमारे छह दर्शन, और छह दर्शन क्या, अगर आप भीतर तक प्रवेश करेंगे, भीतर तक जाएंगे, अवगाहन करेंगे और मतिभ्रम का शिकार न होंगे, तो मुझे तो नहीं लगता कि बौद्ध और जैन का वास्ता भी उपनिषदों से नहीं है, वो तो है। और खुद इसके इसके समानांतर शौत दर्शन भी है, स्वयं उपनिषदों का अपना दर्शन है, गीता का अपना दर्शन है, जिसमें ध्यान योग है, कर्म योग है, मोक्ष योग है, योगा योग है, उसका अपना दर्शन है। तो अनेक रूपों में हमारे दर्शनों का विकास होता है, और मूल वही है। जैसे याज्ञवल्क्य की एक छोटी सी कथा आती है कि वो जर्जर देह वाले हो गए, तो उनको लगा कि अपनी पत्नियों में अपना समूचा धन बांट दें, तो कात्यायनी और मैत्री दोनों को आधा धन बांट दिया उन्होंने। तो कात्यायनी तो प्रसन्न हो गई, और मैत्रेयी ने कहा कि मैं इस धन को लेके क्या करूंगा, कि क्या इससे आत्म सुख मिलेगा। तो याज्ञवल्क्य ने कहा कि नहीं, आत्म सुख नहीं मिलेगा इससे, आत्म सुख तो तुम्हें आत्म साक्षात्कार करने से ही मिलेगा। अरे, अरे वाह, आत्म द्रष्टव्य, याज्ञवल्क्य संहिता में भी है और बृहदारण्यक उपनिषद में भी है। आत्मा को देखो, असल चीज वही है आत्मा, आत्मा ही ब्रह्म है। तुलसीदास कहते हैं इसी को लेके ना, ईश्वरांश जीव अविनाशी, चेतन अमर सहज सुख राशि। तो ईश्वर ईश्वर में और जीव में, आत्मा और ब्रह्म ब्रह्म में एकात्मता है। आत्मा को वही समझना है जैसे हम ईश्वर को समझते हैं, और अनासक्त भाव से इस जगत को जीना है और जीवन मुक्त हो जाना है। यही परम परम कल्याण है। परमार्थ का मतलब परम कल्याण है, अर्थ कल्याण को कहते हैं। और मृणाल जी ने आरंभिक वक्तव्य दिया तो बताया आपने, रामचंद्र गांधी का जिक्र किया, महर्षि अरविंद का जिक्र किया, उसमें आप विवेकानंद को भी देख सकते हैं। बाद बाद में यशदेव शल्य भी हिंदी में काम करने वाले थे। इन तमाम लोगों ने, दया कृष्ण थे, इन तमाम लोगों ने जो भारतीय चिंतन सरणी है हमारी परंपरा की, जो परमार्थ चिंतन है, उसका नवाचार किया, उसको नए संदर्भों में देखने की दृष्टि विकसित की। और जो एक विलोमी समय है, एकताओं के बीच में हम खड़े हैं, बुद्धिवाद ने हमारी चेतना का हरण कर लिया है, हमें श्रद्धा का रोग हो गया है, हम अपने पर भी भरोसा नहीं करते, और हम अहंकार से ये कहते हैं कि हम ईश्वर को भी नहीं मानते। गांधी ने तो कहा, और कई बार बड़ा विचित्र लगता है ये, कि गांधी को मानने और जानने वाले और बड़े बड़े दावा करने वाले जो लोग हैं, ज्यादातर जो ईश्वर को नहीं मानते वो गांधी को मानते हैं। वो गांधी ने तो कहा कि दुनिया में अगर एक व्यक्ति ईश्वर के होने का साक्षी है तो मैं हूं। और विवेकानंद ने कहा इससे सब कुछ कंपायमान है, गतिशील है, उसके कण कण में ईश्वर है। तो मैं यही निवेदन कर रहा हूं कि जो भारतीय पारमार्थिक चिंतन है वह अपने को समझने का, अपने को गृहस्थ आश्रम में रखते हुए भी अनासक्त भाव से जीने का और परम कल्याण के लिए पूरे जगत को एक भाव से देखने और मानने का चिंतन है और दर्शन है। और हमारे सारे दर्शनों ने इसी के निष्कर्षों को बार बार अनेक रूपों में समझाया है। इस पर फिर से कभी विस्तार से समझाया।
Namaskar. I just want to present some thoughts about the roots of the philosophical literature in India and how I see it as an writer. Since ages, man has been contemplating on the relationship between his mind and body, man's relationship with his surrounding, that is Prakriti or nature, and possibly the relationship between his individual being with the universal spirit. The historical evidence suggests that such inquisitiveness and genuine spirit of inquiry as to how the empirical identity is to be transformed into a transcendental identity was to be found only in India. The literature dates back from 6000 BC to 1500 BC and then continued further. Though different interpretations of time by various historians exist, they all fall in the broad time frame. In ancient India, it also started with Rigveda, a Samhita or compilation of hymns, which is considered by many scholars to be the most ancient canonical text in the world. Dr. Nicole Mac, British Indologist, said that literature is clearer than that of either Greece or Israel. Civilization and found in it the expression of their virtue. But the philosophers look like schoolboys for the Indian philosophical thinking. And E.P. Thompson also said there is no that is being taught in the West or East, not active in Indian life. Starting with Rigveda, as you know, we have 4 Vedas, then Puranas, Itihasas, and Kavyas. As for literature, that is Sahityam is concerned, Sahita Swabhava, literature contains hitam, meaning betterment, goodness, welfare. It should act as an agent of transformation. General division of Sahitya, Vedas, Puranas, Kavyas, to understand. Vedas are Sabda Pradhanam. Narration of discourse is that of a king like. Puranas, Itihasas, Mitra Samitam, and Artha Pradhanam is that of a friend. Kavyas are Kanta Samitams with Ukti Lalityam, that is simplicity of expression. The discourse that is that of how you tell your lady or spouse giving explanation, convincing, some increasing into matters which are not close to the subject being discussed. Then there are 18 Puranas. Purana, the Akara gave 5 Lakshanas for all the Puranas. One any called Purana have all the Lakshanas like Sarga, Pratisarga, Vamsha, Manvantara, like that. Thus, there is a huge structured philosophical literature in India fostering intellectual curiosity rather than competitive excellence. Identity of authorship was always self-effacing. Indian civilization is the oldest inquisitive civilization in the world. Then, are the Vedas apaurushayams or divine revelations? I feel it's an understatement. I take pride in the argument or assertion that it was our learned ancestors of that ancient age. Actually, did introspection with the genuine spirit of inquiry, which resulted in the greatest pieces of philosophical literature in the world. Clear that the spirit of inquiry is not done by common persons. It is only possible for sadhaks or mantra drashtas who had to spend life with a lot of discipline, meditation, tapasya, or the power of contemplation, which is not possible for any other. The beauty of the entire gamut of this literature is through discussion and argument. What Sahitya Sen calls the argumentative combat. This argumentative combat in this certainty is inertia, is treated as inertia. Doubt makes for progress. The inquisitiveness and the spirit of inquiry also give room for different ways of interpretation. These quotient and logical discussions always try to comprehend these facets of relationship between the individual being and the spirit. There are different schools of Vedic philosophy, Nyaya, Vaiseshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta, which provide great discussions and arguments to arrive at some understanding of the philosophy. The poetic nature of the hymns and the slokas is become images. The complex thoughts or concepts are made easy to understand through the imagery. Poetry and chandas make them harmonious and musical. This is in the last part. Another important entire Sahitya, philosophical Sahitya is anonymous nature of the author. Identity or authorship was always self-existing. The author always took pleasure in releasing the creative product, thinking that ownership is not. This is in contrast to the medieval poets and saints like Tulsidas, Kabir, Samas, and the last stanza invariably connotates the or signature of the author. While the present is a printed text, it is also astonishing as to how these are Samitas are passed on generations after ages only through oral transmission. The ancestors of caliber in this period also would have produced some creative literature other than the philosophical literature lost forever. Few of the Upanishads are breathtaking as to how the ideas in Vedas further gave rise to beautiful in explanations and expositions in various Puranas and to guide the day-to-day lives of the art. Can I take 2 minutes? 2 more minutes?
Another minute.
Okay. When I talk about imagery, I find some imageries are quite interesting. One is Mrityunjaya mantra of Rigveda, in which Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardha Urvarukam Iva Bandhanam Mrityurma Ukshiyamam. In this, particularly, it is said, we sacrifice to Trayambaka prosperity. Like a ripe cucumber from its stem, might I be liberated from the planting immortal. Like a ripe cucumber freeing itself from the stem, there is no other easy anyone can aspire to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I know the time is running out, and it is a really great honor to make my presentation in the presence of iconic academician Professor Miri. So it is really an honor. Uh, Much ink has been expended over what Indian philosophy is all about, and my co-panelists Alka and Joshi and Pandey already just discussed in detail, not detail, but we know. So when I was asked to write a paper on that, then I said to write on Indian philosophy and what Indian philosophy is all about is something that, on which you can find so much material. But I just picked up a somewhat a different topic. I said I just want to let people know how Muslim or especially Urdu responded to Indian philosophy and how many books were translated into Urdu. This is something that people they don't know, and we think that Urdu just we know that language do not belong to particular religion, but for the many years we just think that every religion has a language. People have a religion, but um, language does not have any religion, but we tend to believe like that. So that's why I will try to make my presentation in 5 to 6 minutes. What Urdu responded to, how Urdu responded to Indian philosophy. So right from the start, I just jotted down say 20 odd books. I will just name what they did. In Urdu, you see, first, or it is in Arabic, the first book was Al-Bairun's book, Hindu Dharma. It was translated into Urdu way back 100 years ago. And in Hindu Dharma, Al-Bairuni discussed all six orthodox philosophies as Professor Mrinal, Miri, and Alka and other discuss, and these three other tradition there he discussed. And another very interesting thing that just Khwaja Hassan Sani Nizami, this Sajjada Nashin of Hazrat Imamuddin, wrote a book, Hindu Mazhab ki Malumat. So it is the first book that we discuss Indian philosophy in a detailed manner, and this is something that we talk about. Another very important Muslim public intellectual, Dr. Abid Hussain, who wrote a book, Hindu Falsafa, Mazhab, and Way of Living, Nizam-e Maaskat, and he also, there's no time other, I'm just naming it, just people say that I'm just dropping name, but it is something that he discussed, otherwise um, I would have given you much detail about the book, what he talked about, how he discussed Charvak philosophy, how he discussed Sankhya Falsafa, and Jog Vashisht and other, but there's no point. And two books were translated into Urdu, Qadim Hindi Falsafa by Shiv Mohan Lal Mathur and Hindi Falsafe ki School by Shiv Mohan Lal Mathur, and S.N. Das Gupta, a book, a very famous historian of Indian philosophy, which is rendered into Urdu, and Casey, and and one very famous Urdu library, Khudabak's library, organized a two seminar on Hinduism, and paper were published. And Upanishads were translated into Persian by Dara Shikoh and is available in Urdu. And another book by Krishna Kumar Pathak by Kapil's Sakh philosophy. And Dr. Muhammad Yasin and Pandit Mohanlal Joshi and many people, I just jotted down 20 books, and there are some Munadir Hassan and some other philosophers. They try to locate a Muslim philosophy in the backdrop of Hindu philosophy or Hindu darshan. And this is one tradition I just talk about, and one very interesting thing. What Indian philosophy is there that we can narrate it, but at least two books I can refer to in which the basic essence of Indian philosophy was discussed through a poet. One book written by Professor Gopichand Narang. You see, much ink has been expended over Ghalib. Ghalib has become industry. I think a lot of books have been written on him. But Narang's book, one book he wrote, it was the name of the book is Ghalib Mani Afrini and Wada Jadaliyati Wada. I will translate into English as well. And Shunyata and Shariat. Uh, and he just discussed the whole Ghalib's poetry in the backdrop of philosophy of Shunyata. What Shunyata is, he defined. I think he took a pains to explain what Shunyata is. It is not something voidness or emptiness as we loosely translate. He goes further that, and he said it is strike at the root of everything. It is not nothingness, but it is just divide of every presence. So Ghalib, how he just excels, and why he just refer to that philosophy in his poetry, and the whole Ghalib's poetry he analyzed it in that backdrop. So it is something very interesting that the Shunyata is a concept, and Ghalib just and the name of the book is Ghalib, meaning dialectical outlook, Shunyata, and poetics. So what is Ghalib's dialectical discourse? Dialectical discourse, especially the Buddhist philosophy, negative dialectics he just discussed, and radical openness and Shunyata. And I will just give an example of one couplet and let's just finish off. Uh, Ghalib's गालिब सा वन कपलेट इज पूछते हैं कि गालिब पूछते हैं वो कि गालिब कौन है, कोई बतलाओ कि हम बतलाएं क्या. This is the couplet Narang quoted, and many ashar he quoted, but this is explained in the backdrop of Shunyata. What Shunyata is, and he says that here is the principle of causation में तो ये कहा गया है जब बर्ड खत्म होती है, कली गायब होती है तो फूल गायब होता है तो पेड़ों पर फल लग जाते हैं. गोया सारी की सारी सूरतें जो किसी वजूद की नजर आती दरअसल दरअस इल्तिबास यानी इल्यूजन की शक्ल है। नागार्जुन कहते हैं कोई भाव है ही नहीं जिसका अभाव हो सके। इसलिए दुनिया, वर्ड और नजात सॉल्वेशन एक ही शय का नाम है। Then Narang quoted Kundi Raja, Robert Magola, Coward, and every Ghalib denounces every dogma, every kind of, he subverts the all that we held very dear. हमको मालूम है जन्नत की हकीकत, लेकिन दिल के बहलाने को गालिब ख्याल अच्छा है. Nowadays nobody could do that. That he denounces, so he just explained what the point I was just making is. In This is the first book in which he deciphered our major poet with the reference of Indian philosophy. Indian philosophy, that is Shunita, how Ghalib expressed himself through Indian ethos, Indian way of thinking. Another writer, uh, uh, Intizar Hussain, he just referred to so many tales and so many things related to Hindu philosophy in his writings. So there are many poets and many authors, and one is I just referred to um, Intizar Hussain and Bedi, Rajendra Singh Bedi, and many writers. He just uses this philosophy and this basic thoughts of Hindu philosophy, how they creatively use to write something, to explain something what Indian philosophy is all about, is one thing. But to express through our creative outpouring, it is something rare. And Shamsul Rahman Farooqi, when he wrote a book on Mir, he explained how Mir reacts to Indian reality and what is the Indian reality is all about. And he explained that Indian knowledge is a unified body of knowledge. And it is just, you can find so many insights about the spirituality. So he just explained. So that's the point I was just making is philosophical writing in India, if we know much about it, but how Muslim philosophers or the Muslim writers, they responded to Indian philosophy, it is something that we are not aware of that. So my small paper tries to locate Indian philosophy in the backdrop of Urdu writers. Thank you very much.
Hello. So we have, very within this very limited time, we had I think, some very exciting presentation. He began with Alka ji. She gave an account of kind of the entire field of Indian philosophy. She talked about all the traditional things that go by the name of Indian philosophy in our universities and colleges. She also talked about S.A.V and the influence of S.A.V on some of the very tall philosophers in the country, not just Miri, but before our time. So then we had Joshi. He talked about, in fact, you see his main thrust was how to regain and retain independence of thinking for Indians. Am I right? Yes. And in this connection, of course, I did mention K.C. Bhattacharya. K.C. Bhattacharya also wrote a small paper called Swarajyan Ideas. Tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And of course, K.C. Bhattacharya, you see, he operated during the heyday of British colonialism, and where the Western thinking made a kind of, made a conquest, as it were, of our mind. I mean, Indian thinking was also there, but only incidentally, only accident. So our colleges, our philosophical and other kinds of curricula, they were all borrowed from the West. And art. This is how our, the minds of our educated people were kind of designed, as it were. They thought that, well, Indian thinking was all right, but we set aside, if possible, if not set aside, but give it a little present. But we must design our educational system in such a way that it is the thing that that must take pride of place within Indian. So it is in this kind of atmosphere that Kishore wrote his Swarajyan ideas. I think the main thrust of Swarajyan ideas is that, and of course, we can't help when Western thinking has come to us and has been forced on us. It is not something that we can think about just now. We have to accept it, but we have to accept it. It is not too late to think. We have to accept it on our own terms. That is Swarajyan ideas. That if we look at Western philosophy, if we are made to study Western philosophy, we must make sure that we study Western philosophy according to our own, traditional equipment, intellectual equipment, in terms of our own traditional intellectual equipment. It is only then that we shall learn something fresh, even from Western philosophy. And it is also then that we shall have some kind of independence, not entire independence, but some kind of independence of thought in times such as ours, that is, the times of King. I think that is the why talked about the Urdu acceptance of Indian philosophy. Very feeling. And talked about Narang, I hope it's Narang. Narang wrote very feelingly about Buddhism, about Sunyata. And this was also, in a sense, Western or Indian philosophy, Indian thought, Buddhist thought, Advaitin thought, to bear upon our acceptance of Islam. So I think, on the whole, I think it's a good session. I wish to go to this very, very interesting issue. But thank you all very much for being patient.
I must give my thanks to the panel for giving such an insightful contribution to make this session so truly successful and meaningful. Thank you so much. आप सभी की बातचीत ने बहुत सी चीजों को सोचने को हमें मजबूर किया. Is it a combination of body and soul? Is it a combination of physical world and the world? जितने सवाल आते हैं उतने ही आप उसके अंदर डूबते हैं, डूबते जाते हैं. शायद दर्शन में जाना, एक्चुअल दर्शन यही, to look into yourself. Thank you so much, sir, for this such a wonderful session. एक बार हम लोग क्लोज खड़े हो जाएं ताकि हम लोग एक आ जाए सबके लिए. मैं इस बीच में आप लोगों को इतना बता दूं कि इसके बाद माननीय मंत्री जी, संस्कृति मंत्री हमारे बीच में आने वाले हैं. जो बाहर इसका जो औपचारिक इनॉग्रेशन होना था वो अब होगा शाम को, रिबन काट करके और दीप जला करके, और उसके बाद वो इसी का आएंगे इसी हॉल में. और जो उद्घाटन की औपचारिकताएं हैं वो तब होंगी. तो अभी आप लोग कहीं ज्यादा दूर न जाएं, जब थोड़ा देर एक राउंड लेके आ सकते हैं और फिर हम लोग इसी हॉल में दोबारा मिलते हैं, क्योंकि जो फॉर्मल इनॉग्रेशन होना है वो अभी होगा. थैंक यू सो मच. हाँ हाँ देंगे 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 देंगे